Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this VRF symposium. I'm Yuki Tomita, an ESG Communication Manager at Tokyo Electric Power Company Holdings. I work in Tepco's Environment Department on primary climate change issues. In 2019, I led a project to perform scenario analysis based on TCFD recommendations. And since 2020, I have been responsible for creation of the integrated report handling ESG rating agencies and ESG engagement. Since 2020, I have also been a member of the SASV Standards Advisory Group. In this presentation, I would like to tell you how and why Tepco is using both the IRC framework and SASV standards and their effects. Next slide, please. Let me begin by telling you today's agenda. I will first talk about the Tepco group. Next, I will explain why we are using both the IRC framework and SASV standards. I will also explain how we use both tools and what we disclose in the integrated report. And lastly, I will tell you about how our financial stakeholders are responding. Through engagement with the financial stakeholders, we aim to further develop ESG initiatives and information disclosure. I would also like to share with you the results of the questionnaire we distributed institutional investors and intellectuals about our latest integrated report. I'd also like to give you some examples of how both of these tools have contributed to ESG-related decision-making and how, as a result, the ESG score of the Tepco groups have improved. Next slide, please. First of all, let me give you some information about Tepco group. Tepco is the largest electric power company in Japan, operating mainly in the Kanto region, which includes Tokyo. Tepco has adopted a holding company system and has 4 companies divided by business segment. The holding company governs Tepco's nuclear power business and the 4 other companies, namely Fuel and Power, Power Grid, Electricity Retail, and Renewable Power. This last company was established in April of last year to meet the growing carbon neutral needs of our customers. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to talk about 3 of the Tepco Group's strengths. The graph on the left indicates the scale of a business and high productivity. Tepco Group's operating revenue is 6 trillion yen, which is on par with such amazing companies as Iberdrola, Enel, and EDF. Tepco has the highest per capita operating revenue and both high productivity. The graph in the middle shows our average system interruption duration. The stable supply of electricity is ingrained in Tepco's DNA. One of our strengths is the ability to keep interruptions short through the use of the world-best transmission and distribution technology, even in the face of natural disasters that grow fiercer as a result of climate change. The graph on the right shows how small our direct GHG emissions are. As concerns over ESG heighten, Tepco has completely transferred its fuel and thermal power business to JERA, J-E-R-A, and drastically reduced its direct CO2 emissions. And we are revising our portfolio in order to achieve carbon neutrality. Next slide, please. This is a detailed explanation of a power portfolio as we aim for carbon neutrality. Tepco's energy portfolio is 3 parts that look at the power generation and retail, power generation capacity, watt, and power volume, watt hour. In conjunction with the handing over of entire thermal power generation business, nuclear power and renewable energies each account for half of the power capacity portfolio. Furthermore, since our nuclear power plants are currently not in operation, renewable energies account for 99% of the power generation volume. Our retail power volume is upwards of 200 terawatt hours, but 80% of the power supplied to our customers is procured from thermal power generation. Next slide, please. This slide shows the Tepco Group's ESG management structure. We have established an ESG committee for discussing ESG issues that management needs to address. With the president as chair and the CFO and ESG directors as deputy chairs, other executives and presidents of core companies serve as members of the committee. Based on engagement with financial stakeholders carried out using the IRC framework and SASV standards as tools, we are able to ascertain changes in our external environment and quickly promote ESG management, such as setting CO2 reduction targets. Next slide, please. We proactively engage with financial stakeholders about ESG. Following the establishment of the ESG office in January 2019, we engaged more than 100 times with various investors. The result of COVID-19 pandemic in recent months, engagement with financial stakeholders overseas have decreased. ESG-related issues identified through such engagement are discussed by the ESG committee and disclosed through our integrated report. Next slide, please. I will now move on to Tepco's integrated report. We believe there is a strong commitment to disclosing information on our environmental and social responsibility initiatives will help to reduce future risks. And over the mid to long term, it will enhance our corporate value and provide opportunity to increase future financing options. Tepco has positioned the integrated report as an important information disclosure tool. We began publishing this report in 2017, at which time we based the report on the IRC framework. Since 2019, the report has also been based on SASV standards. We have identified financial stakeholders like investors and shareholders as the primary readers of the integrated report. As such, we produced this report while remaining aware of what is of greatest interest to them, such as financial and non-financial results, future business prospects based on integrated thinking, and our journey toward value creation. Next slide, please. We believe that by participating in the revision of both the IRC framework and SASV standards, we can show the big picture, including our strengths and strategies to stakeholders both inside and outside of the company. Using both tools have helped to improve and heighten engagement with companies and investors. Tepco is participating in the IRC Business Network and SASV Standard Advisory Group in order to help both these tools to evolve by providing knowledge as companies that actually use both tools. Next slide, please. We believe that the IRC framework and SASV standards are excellent integrated reporting tools. We therefore believe that merging the two will create a synergy that enables us to leverage the advantage of both. The keys to enabling the use of these excellent tools to spread in the future are their user-friendliness for not only companies but also investors, and the use of common language for the information expressed using these tools that transcend the gaps in comprehension brought up by culture and linguistic differences. Next slide, please. This slide shows what Tepco believes to be the relationship between SASV metrics and IRC capitals in the utility sector. We have revised how we see this relationship. As you can see, they are interrelated. In light of this relationship, we believe it is important to present business strategies that contribute to the long-term improvement of corporate value as well as current performance aimed at achieving this target. Next slide, please. Tepco believes that corporate action based on integrated thinking will enable the realization of a purpose. In order to accomplish this, we are leveraging tangible and intangible management resources to the best of ability and engaging in initiatives to improve corporate value and create social value over the long term. In our integrated report, the management resources of the Tepco Group have been organized into the 6 chapters put forth in the IRC framework. Next slide, please. Next, I would like to tell you in detail how Tepco utilizes the IRC framework. I have been told that our method is quite unique. Topics related to important mid to long-term management issues have been identified for each chapter and used as detailed examples of our value creation process. Next slide, please. Let's use natural capital as an example. On the natural capital page, you will see information on our overseas hydroelectric project. Tepco Renewable Power is aiming for the effective utilization of water resources by leveraging our advanced maintenance management know-how cultivated through our domestic business and forming partnerships with other operators. At the Koc Sang Hydroelectric Power Station in Vietnam, our first overseas hydroelectric power project, Tepco Renewable Power personnel are building a strong relationship of trust that transcend culture and national borders through frequent discussion with personnel on the ground. We aim to increase the value of the power station. Next slide, please. By using 6 chapters, the IRC framework can be used to identify a company's strengths, strategies, output, and outcome. We believe that this allows us to convey the entire value of a business while also conveying in an easy-to-understand manner to investors how the business is transitioning in light of the trend towards carbon neutrality. In particular, integrated thinking will contribute capital allocation, long-term corporate value, and decision-making. Next slide, please. I now will move on to SASV standards. There are 3 main reasons why we have adopted SASV standards. The first is the growing interest from investors. The letter from the CEO of BlackRock in January 2020 had a major impact on the financial industry. Through over 50 ESG engagements with financial stakeholders, we had already recognized the importance of SASB in 2019. Through these engagements, we learned that interest in SASB from financial stakeholders was rapidly increasing, and we wanted to meet their needs. Secondly, we liked the idea that SASB's industry-specific materiality enhances comparability. SASB has established standards for each of 77 industry sectors, and these standards, which include the process of materiality identification, has been selected logically and carefully, resulting in only the bare necessities. And thirdly, following a detailed global framework like the SASV standards allows Tepco to ensure consistency and transparency when disclosing ESG information to release. I will use the following slides to explain how Tepco is complying with SASV standards. Next slide, please. I will now move on to our information disclosure for 2021 in line with SASV standards. Based on our engagement with financial stakeholders, we again established three main policies. The first is including a frequently asked questions section. Now that the Tepco is complying with SASV standards, we've seen an increase in inquiries from financial stakeholders and companies. So we decided to include a frequently asked questions section. We believe that this will help various Japanese stakeholders to understand SASB. Next slide, please. The second policy is making comparisons with other companies. Since SASB enables comparisons to be made as the part of the activity matrix, we have compared Tepco with other global utility companies. This enables readers who may not be familiar with Tepco to get a grasp of Tepco as a whole and its characteristics. Next slide, please. The third policy entails disclosing data for multiple years. By disclosing data for multiple years, we can convey large change that occurred in conjunction with trends and business transitions. And we can also show our progress towards achieving a certain target. Furthermore, in the accounting metrics, we have tried to disclose information on Tepco's value chain while remembering that the disclosed information must be easy to understand. Next slide, please. Some companies that are trying to adopt the SASB standard are concerned about how to proceed with information disclosure and increased workload. However, we feel there is little additional workload from adopting the SASB standards. It is important that companies wanting to adopt the SASB standards first have a deep understanding of the SASB metrics and the data they need. Then they can identify any item that overlap with the ESG data they already have or will be collecting, and simply add any new data they need to the traditional data collection process. In the case of Tepco, compliance with the SASB standards was included in the integrated reporting process. Next slide, please. There are many standards and frameworks in the ESG world, and discussions are underway to unify them. It is, however, important to ensure that companies can improve usability and comparability. To this end, it is essential that materiality be narrowed down by industry, and SASB covers this. Accordingly, we believe that there will be an increasing need in the future for financial stakeholders to comply with SASB standards. And engagement with financial stakeholders through SASB will contribute to the enhancement of corporate value. Next slide, please. In August, Tepco published our integrated report for 2021. Since then, we have used the integrated report as a tool for engaging with financial stakeholders. We also distributed a questionnaire to stakeholders to gather their opinion in regards to the content of the report, including IRC on the SASB. Now, I would like to tell you the result of that questionnaire. In regards to the IIRC framework, stakeholders presented pros and cons and Tepco's unique method of expression. Those in favor of this method said that using the Octopus model to convey the company's key management issues was clear, detailed, and extremely easy to understand. Those opposed found that it was difficult to imagine the company's entire value creation process because a model was created for each chapter. But opinions such as this will help us to improve the report. Therefore, for the next report, we shall create the value creation process that enables us to convey increases in corporate value over the long term for the entire Tepco group. Next slide, please. This slide shows the result of SASB. More than 90% of stakeholders have a positive impression of SASB standards. Stakeholders also felt that the frequently asked questions section was easy to understand, which is what we had expected. We are also thankful that stakeholders thought that improvement of disclosure to make global comparisons was quite wonderful and the best practice. Tepco intends to continue to lead Japan in information disclosure based on SASB standards. Next slide, please. So I've discussed information disclosure using the IRC framework and SASB standards, and also how we are using these tools to engage with the stakeholders. Now, I would like to give some examples of how both of these tools have been used for internal decision-making. As I explained with the other slide on IRC, we believe that corporate action based on integrated thinking will enable us to achieve Tepco's purpose. Tepco's vision for the future includes providing new value to our customers in the form of carbon neutrality. And as I mentioned, using the slide on SASB standards, when we used accounting metrics data for multiple years to present our value chain, we found that by handing over our thermal power generation business, we are able to largely reduce Scope 1 CO2 emissions, which come from the generation of power. But in contrast, we saw a large increase in Scope 3 CO2 emissions that originate from the sale of power. Therefore, with the understanding that setting Scope 3 CO2 emission reduction targets is socially significant, we declared that we will be carbon half by 2030, and carbon neutral by 2050. On the other hand, using both of these tools to compile and disclose information has many benefits for external stakeholders. It also contributes internal management and business decisions. Next slide, please. Lastly, I would like to discuss Tepco's ESG score for the last couple of years. Since we started using both of these tools, our ESG score has steadily risen, and our S&P Global ESG score for this year was the highest in Japan's power sector. The last thing I would like to convey to you today is the fact that using the both of these tools can improve the effectiveness of ESG management in your company. Next slide, please. We will continue to make engagement with financial stakeholders more fruitful by incorporating an effective disclosure framework, including the IRC framework and SASV standards, into the integrated report. By proactively disclosing ESG information, we hope to convey the appeal of Tepco and our developing journey towards value creation to all financial stakeholders. Thank you for your attention.